All right, welcome to today's podcast. I'm really excited today. You get a 2-for-1 sort of deal today. I've got two guests with me, Jen and Stacy Conkey from. They are partners and the founders of the Remote Multifamily Investing Academy. We're going to learn a lot more about that, learn more about them, and they have a book out, the Multifamily Freedom Hacking. I love that. I love that title. Your playbook to unlock long-term cash flow from rental properties. So Jen and Stacy have over 20 plus years as entrepreneurs and real estate investors. So really fortunate to have them share a little bit about their background, how they help folks and their journey along their real estate and business journey. So Jen and Stacy, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's awesome to be here.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I don't often get two people, so this is fun. So we'll kind of play off, see how this rolls. But watching a lot of your information, the great videos and education, I know you guys are going to bring a lot of energy to this podcast and obviously wisdom. So listen, so before we get started in any nitty gritty around the academy, things you're doing, just tell the audience here a little bit about your guys' background, kind of your journey in kind of a nutshell. I know there's both of you, so whoever wants to start, kick it off.
Sounds good.
All right. So we've both been investing for 20-ish years, but our journeys didn't start together or at the same time. So we have pretty different starts at things. But for me, it was, I didn't even realize that real estate investing was a thing. I was completely unaware. I was 28 years old. I was in corporate America working on climbing the corporate ladder. And that's when I became aware of it. And I was like, oh, wait, that's a thing. Like you could make money. You could make a living doing that. I got to learn more. So that's where I got started. And I left my job in corporate America probably way too soon because I was so enthusiastic. I was all enthusiasm. And so it made it a little bit more stressful than it had to be. But, everybody's journey is what it's supposed to be to get the lessons. But that's what it was for me, just learning that it was even a thing and then jumping in and going through the process and learning as I went.
Yeah. For me, I was in corporate America. I was also 28 years old at the time. It was about 2002 back then. And my brother came over and said, hey, come to the store with me. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't have kids back then. I was literally just working in corporate America, trying to make as much money and get into the next C-suite, right? And so we're driving. 6 hours later, he's driving for dollars and telling me about flipping for profits. And I was like, wait, what? What do you mean? And he just walked me through that model of flipping and what that would look like. And I was like, oh my God, let's do this right now. Like we drove back to his house, got paperwork to figure out what our LLC was going to be named. It was ridiculous. Just went all for it. I ended up doing that as a side hustle for 12 years while still in corporate America. I didn't have the enthusiasm that Stacy had, but I did have the DIY to go try to figure it out and made mistakes along the way. And eventually from flipping, wholesaling, getting into buy and hold properties. And then by the time I met Stacy, it was like, let's do apartments. She was already doing them. I had not been able to do them, but she was already coaching people on it. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to do apartments. Let me try and figure this out. But that was my journey. I was in corporate America for 22 years before I finally just realized, you know what? I think I got this and I could do this full time, and made that leap back in 2015. So it's been 8 years of solely focused on real estate investing.
Wow, incredible. Yeah, and that's always the hardest part. I mean, I reflect on when I first started off and I went to like a real estate investment meetup. I didn't know what the hell. I didn't know anything. I was walking into this crowd of people who I assumed knew everything about real estate investing. They didn't know anything either. Right? So it was like a fun thing, but you had to start somewhere. Like, so how did you what was the kind of the starting point for you though? Because there's a lot of ways to do real estate investing, and it's like kind of just getting your head around stuff, right?
So I started similar to you. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. Then I went to a real estate investing club at a library in the back room of a library, same as you. And when I went there, someone was like, hey, there's a seminar. There's like a 1-day seminar coming, and it's free. It's at the Red Lion Hotel. Yeah. I was like, okay. So I went there, and they were selling education. And so I invested in my education. It was $40,000 at the time, and I was like, well, I mean, if I'm going to do this, like, let me learn how to do it right so I don't make a bunch of mistakes. The education was quite awful. It was very poor quality, so I still made a lot of mistakes, but it probably moved me forward a lot faster than I would have otherwise. But then I got in and just started figuring it out. And so for me, my very first deal was a fix and flip. I lived in California at the time, and in Sacramento. And the market there was very competitive at the time and also very expensive. And so to get into any kind of investment required a lot of capital. And that was something I did not have at the time. So my journey ended up leading me to do everything remotely. And thankfully, I had a teacher early on who introduced me to the concept. And so even my first deal was 2 hours away. After that, everything else was like cross country. And since that time, everything I've done has been remote. And that's how we run our business now. Jen's story is totally different. Yeah. But that was me. That was how I started.
Yeah, for me, I did not invest in my education until much later in life. I just went for it. I had that do-it-yourself approach. So it was me, my brother, and my dad that did my very first flip. And that flip lasted 7 months, and we made a collective $1,500. It was awful. And so, at the time, I remember when I was going to sell that flip, somebody at the time, it was the realtor who was he had also invested in his education. And he was like, hey, you should probably, I know that I would benefit from you selling this, but you should probably hold it. You should hold on to this and just keep it as a rental. And I was like, oh no, I don't have time for that. I'm trying to transfer down where I'm supposed to be going for my new job, and I won't have time for that. And I really wish I could go back in time and change that decision, because I would still have that property. And it's like, don't even get me started on how much opportunity I lost on that. But he was also in an education program learning how to do that whole buy and hold strategy. But it did plant a seed that made me realize that was something that I wanted to figure out. But I didn't want to be the one that had to, go do the things if the toilet overflowed, and go do the things if there was a pipe that busted. So I was afraid to jump in, and it held me back a little bit. And Stacy over here was just like, let's go.
Well, I'm getting the sense that you guys have different sort of ways of approaching things, which is probably the best thing, because you guys are probably complementary to each other.
Absolutely.
We are 100% complementary.
We're so opposite.
Opposite skill set, opposite everything.
We're opposite down to our hair color.
Well, I appreciate that. If you guys started looking the same, I'd be like, I'm getting confused who's who. So I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's the thing. Some of it is kind of, until you experience it, you don't really know if it's right for you or not, and whether it's a good fit. So I think these are all things that you don't, until you kind of see it and feel it and understand it, I think you won't really know. It's kind of theoretical, frankly, in my mind. And so I would urge anyone who's listening, these are the types of things. I mean, as folks who are maybe thinking about getting to real estate investing, it's like, got to take at least a step forward with it, whether it's learning, right, or leveraging experts like Jen and Stacy to help you guide you to it, because there's so much to learn, but you also have to kind of figure out what's the right fit. It's funny because I always often get asked sometimes, Tom, through my clients, like, where do I invest? And I said, first thing I said, what do you know about? Like, what interests you? What gets you sort of passionate about what you're doing, and why are you doing it? Like, what's the purpose for it? And it's funny, how did real estate kind of land for you guys? Because obviously there's a lot of things to invest in. Why is real estate so appealing to you?
Yeah, for me, I was born and raised. My dad always told me, whatever you do in life, get your education, get your college education, and buy land, buy real estate. Mm. And I never knew why. I was like, buy land. What the hell am I going to do with land? But he always said, everybody, most millionaires, it's because of real estate. So get in there. So go to work, do your job, and on the side, try to figure out how to buy some land, because there's only so much dirt on this earth, and eventually somebody's going to have to build on it. So you want to find yourself in a good opportunity zone and just stick with it. And I was like, okay, but land never really fascinated me. It does today, but I started learning about the stock market. Quite honestly, I worked in the stock market in terms of like my own portfolio and building our own stocks. And it always fascinated me, but the volatility, it was not as stable as I have experienced in real estate. So for me, the two are very good investment vehicles. But real estate's the one that's always been the most constant. And I've just learned that over the years that no matter what's going on in the market, people always have to have somewhere to live. And that's the one thing that's always been, it's deep inside of me that's my number one investment strategy is. And it doesn't just have to be multifamily. There's many different aspects, many different asset classes within multifamily, which keeps it diverse. So you could still have a diverse real estate portfolio and you could still have a diverse stock portfolio, right? But definitely want to diversify and be in both places.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. It is trying to figure, that people think of diversification as like, it's a mix of stocks and bonds, right?
Right.
Whatever the situation is. Yeah. You can broaden out to be stocks, bonds, real estate, businesses, etc. The world's your oyster. I think
Right.
there's so many options. So interesting. So for you guys, obviously your experience and you've migrated to multifamily, which, and we'll go more, I want to definitely go more into detail of that kind of why you've kind of targeted that area for your own investment and then certainly for the academy. But first and foremost, this is focused really on buying and holding, right? And owning it for long term,
Yeah.
right? And why that's so important. So for you, why is that for generational wealth? Is it for ownership? Like what's really the draw for you guys?
Passive income. I mean, there's so many benefits to multifamily, and when people get started in, especially if start really young, there's a fairly common path that people follow through real estate. Like Jen, like when she started with fixing and flipping, and same with me.
Yeah.
Fixing and flipping is a kind of a common place that people start. I don't recommend fixing and flipping right now in this economy, but that is a common place to start. And then people will be like, oh, okay, well maybe go ahead and hold that property. Like what Jen was talking about, if she would have held that property, she would have an asset all these years later that's worth, $500,000 more than it was then. So that's kind of a common thing. People are like, okay, I get the concept and I get that you can build wealth in real estate. So they might start with a single family home or two. Multifamily starts at, 2 to 4 units is residential multifamily. And the way that it works as far as lending and the valuation is the same as single family. So it's kind of an easy transition for people. And then multifamily, that is apartments, is anything 5 or more. And part of the reason we do all sorts of different real estate. We match our real estate investing based on what's happening in the economy at the time. We know how to do every different kind, and we've done every different kind, and we do it. Multifamily is our focus at this point in this time. It probably will just continue to be because there's so much money to be made in it. What everybody knows about is cash flow and equity over time. Like those are the things that generally the population, they get that. Okay, I get it. Cash flow. And the more units you have, the less risky it is from the standpoint of if one tenant loses their job and you have a single family home and that tenant can't pay, you're a little screwed on, you got to pay the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, the property taxes, all out of pocket. That's risky. You can make the most money in equity in single family homes, but can you survive the lack of cash flow if something happens to your tenant? So the more units you have, the more you spread out the risk. So that was very compelling to me when I was getting started. As I've learned over time, with multifamily over 5 units, if you can increase the income of the property, which is not difficult to do, you actually raise the value of the property like at a large multiple. So it's very common in any deal we do to make 6 and 7 figures, even on smaller apartment buildings, even something that's 10 to 20 units, you can make 6 to 7 figures just by operating the property better than the previous owner. And we're not doing it ourselves. We use leadership, we use project management to manage our third-party property manager. We set the business plan. Jen is the ultimate strategist. So she will go in and say, okay, these are all the things that we can do to get the revenue up, add value to our tenants, decrease expenses, and it just shoots the value up. And we mostly hold, but when it comes to a point where we want to trade up, we've created all this equity and we can either sell it or 1031 exchange it, or we can refinance it, pull some of our cash back out, keep that asset, and then put that money down on another asset. That gives us more cash. So our goal is just keep building more and more cash flow.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is not only cash flow, but I want to try and have as many doors as possible under few roofs. So the more assets I have with the more larger size doors, that's the ultimate goal. Just keep stepping up. But we also, we made an investment 2 years ago and we bought a motel, and that one we intend to keep for 30 years. And that's really just a place where we can go with our kids and create memories. And the cash flow helps us do that. So for us, it's lifestyle, cash flow, the freedom, and making memories. You won't see us go out and buy a whole bunch of Lambos and mansions and jets. That's not our jam. We have 4 kids, so we're all about memories. And so there's a little bit of both, but the cash flow, we are united on that. The cash flow is what provides the opportunity for all of that to happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. And that is a big departure, I think, in the typical financial advice of just accumulating money and someday get to use it. And that's usually what most people are taught. And to your point, like you want to use it now, right? Because we're not guaranteed tomorrow or next week,
That's
right?
that's true.
Right.
That's absolutely true.
And so how do we enjoy it today and not defer? I always use some of the accounts like you're deferring life too, right? In
Right.
a lot of ways. And this is what you're helping to bring to people's lives. Like, how can you enjoy life today by building more cash flow assets, right? So you can use them, consume them, and wherever you want to. If you like Lambos, go ahead, buy them. It's all yours.
Totally.
Right?
Exactly.
That's your
We
thing.
just know we're going to get a gummy bear stuck to our butt if we go climb in the Lambo when we have these 4 kids.
Yeah.
So-
Maybe in 10 years.
In 10 years. Yeah.
Then it'll be grandkids though.
Yeah. No matter what, there's always going to be a gummy bear stuck to our butt. So
But yeah, create the
Yeah,
cash
right.
flow to live life how you want and get the toys that you want, and
Yeah.
and get a property for every toy so it pays for the toy. Like that's
yeah.
why we do what we do.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, and so from your experience, obviously, so a couple of things I want to maybe just pivot slightly to is because, obviously for people who are listening that are just kind of, at their job, they're like, oh my God, how do I even get into this, right? It sounds great. All the cash flow, the legacy maybe planning, tax benefits, all these things sound great, but like, how do I even get started? So that's usually the biggest challenge. So is that kind of was a little bit the genesis of this academy, or tell me more about that?
So go ahead. So I've been training when I got started because my education was really lacking in any kind of detail. I was very passionate very early on about making sure that other people didn't suffer along their journey the way that I did. And and I know that part of my purpose and my path was to bring me here to help the next generation, but I think that most people, if they had hit their head as many times as I did as I was getting started, they would have quit. And then they're stuck in a life that it's just like, what's the point? And so I kept going, but I was like, other people would have quit. So I have to figure out how to do this, how to do it right. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to spread the word and make sure people have what they need so that they can do it successfully, so they don't get hurt financially and end up quitting. So I've always been very passionate about, so I mean, I was training within 4 or 5 years of when I started. And I've just always been about the brand new person. That's like where I'm the most passionate, is working with someone who is absolutely brand new. And not just teaching them the A, B, C, D, because I was taught like, okay, A, and then there's F, and then there's L, but I didn't have anything in between. So I just didn't understand how to do it. And I'm very analytical. And so for analytical people, that is a very challenging kind of situation. But for me, that was it. It was like, let me take the brand new person and not just give them the knowledge and the information, but also hold their hand, because every step feels scary when you're like a boss in corporate America. You know what you're doing. Like, you are so confident because you're an expert at what you do. That's where you end up. And then you go do something brand new. It is very uncomfortable because you're not used to being the new guy again. And so, between Jen has so much when it comes to strategy and mindset, and people need that. They need the mindset and they need the hand holding just to have that confidence. But it's not as complicated as people think. If you just take one step at a time, then you get your first property. That's the hardest one. After that, then the second property is so much easier. And then third, fourth, fifth, 10th, 20th, it just, things start rolling. And then you start growing and getting bigger properties and bigger, and it's a little bit more challenging, but it's only a little bit more challenging. So my passion has always been like, let me help people get across the finish line of that first one. And then we help them scale it. Yeah, that's just where I'm passionate. I want people to have a good experience so that they keep following their dreams.
Yeah, and we started the academy because there's really 2 ways that you can get involved in real estate. You can either be an active investor or a passive investor. And some people choose to go the passive investor path, where they find an operator that's really good and they invest in their deals, right? Yeah. So we do that. That's just what we do. We've had people invest in our deals over the years. One of the reasons that we started the academy was, the first one was, like Stacy said, to disrupt the education space and help the newer investors. The other reason was because as we invest, you feel a little bit alone when you're out there. And at least I did. So I was passionate. She was passionate about disrupting the education space. I was passionate about building a community. So we've made the academy in a way that instead of doing one-on-one trainings like she had been doing for years, I had the vision of, let's go one-to-many and figure out how we can create a community that helps one another build a skyline together And this is a team sport when it really comes down to it. It's not an individual sport, right? So that's the main reason why we made the Academy, is that we took the A to Z training that Stacy's so good at, taking a complex topic and breaking it down and making it very simple to understand. And then I'm really good at helping you like break down your mindset, what you believe that's standing in your way, helping you shatter that belief so that you can step into it. So between the two of us, we really created this amazing environment. And then all of the people started to come, and we started attracting the people that are just like us. And so now we've got hundreds of students in there that are all helping lift each other up. And it's just a really cool environment. We've been doing that for like 4 years now. And we love that. We love that. So if you have 10 to 15 hours a week to learn how to invest, be an active investor, the Academy is a great option for that.
In our opinion, everybody should be involved in real estate at some level. It's a good, solid way to store your cash and your wealth, to allow it to build. Some people, they want to do it. Like I want to do it. I love the game of real estate. All of our students love the game of real estate. Other people, they totally want to do it. Some people are like, I get it, but I do not want to spend the time on that. I don't have the time, but I do want to put my money into it. And so what Jen was talking about was we cater to both. We have our academy for people who want to learn it, and we hold their hand. We bring them in and we do it with them. And then for our other investors that are like, I'm into it, but I don't want to be the one to do it, we get into deals, and then we will allow them to invest in our deals with us. So that's how we are able to help everyone, as long as they're interested in getting into real estate.
Right. No, that's good. Yeah. And that's what it is. And through the exploration, trying to figure out maybe timing is not right for folks to get too active, but maybe they'll get there some point, right? As their situation changes or cash flow allows, right? Maybe
Exactly.
they can buy back some of their time from their jobs by when they start building their real estate portfolio. One of the things and we talked a little bit about this before before I hit record was, I'm really a big believer in building strong foundations. When people ask me about investing, I said, yes, figure out where maybe it makes sense for you to invest. But, I always try to figure out what's their foundation around their financial lives, right? Just like a house, right? Like you can't have a house with like fancy, countertops and kitchens, but the foundation is broken. You got to have that in place before you go too crazy, from my perspective. And I know you guys put it on your website too, around some pillars around building that solid foundation around your real estate investing. Could you share a little bit more about that and share some of the things that really make up a great foundation to your real estate investing?
Oh, absolutely. I think for us, the pillars that we try to focus on is we do want to have an element of cash flow that's coming in constantly. It's a big value of ours. The cash flow pays for everything. I think that when it comes to the foundation that you have set, you've really got to be looking at what's going on in the economy. And sometimes the headlines will try to scare the crap out of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be like, oh God, the real estate market is crashing, and those headlines, it's going to be 2008 all over again. And sometimes your mind will take over and start thinking about worst case scenarios. And then you get obsessed with that. And then you might scare yourself out of taking action. So the best foundational practice that you can have, it starts with your mind and you believing in yourself to have this, right? And whatever's going on in the economy, there is always a strategy when it comes to investing. So, back in 2008, 2009, all of those people that kind of withdrew, everybody else that leaned in, they became multimillionaires very quickly over the preceding years. And it's because they were willing to run in when everyone else was running out, and they saw opportunity where everybody else saw, oh, I'm afraid. It's like Warren Buffett always says, you want to buy fear and sell greed. Well, we're coming into a time where the economy has shifted again. It has shifted in a way, and they've been printing money for years, right? There's so much money that's been printed, and our economy is basically defying gravity as we see all these interest rate hikes that are coming up. It has fundamentally changed the lending climate. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what strategies to deploy when the economy is doing this, then you might be afraid, you might be scared. So you have to educate yourself. So foundationally, you have to understand a macroeconomic and a microeconomic, and then what strategy you're going to use in each situation. And that's something that I pride ourselves on. We do that very well. We are very in tune with what's going on in the economy. We have to be, because as investors, we have so many people that put their money to work for them, and we have to protect that money and insulate that money. And if we don't know what's going on in the economy and we don't understand that, then we can put that money in danger for them, and we can't have that. So foundationally, that's what we're about. We're like, need to know what's going on in the economy. Most importantly, need to know what to do if things change. You have controllables and uncontrollables, and the interest rate, we can't really control that, but you can control doing seller financing instead and going down a different path. So I think that foundationally, you have to know what strategies there are, understand where you are in the game, like where, that little pin that says you are here on the map, like you are here, and then what's going on around you. And what does that mean in terms of your strategy that you need to go deploy based on your resources of time, money, interest, passion, and what's your risk tolerance? So knowing those things, you build that foundational with mindset, if you will, to keep going forward, but also having confidence in whether it's your deal or you're investing in somebody else's deal. Do they know what's going on? And are they vetted enough? And are they veterans in this? Have they been through it before? And if they have, what did they stub their toe on? And how did they respond? And what are they doing now? Those types of questions are always good to ask. But man, if you don't know what's going on in the economy, really going on, not what's going on in headlines, but like really knowing what's going on, finding the best markets, knowing where the opportunities are. That's a really good foundational principle to have, is understanding all of those things, because then when you know that and you implement it, you get the cash flow coming in, and then that's how you change your life.
And to that point, is that understanding you have, and the way you described it is great, is not everything. First of all, nothing's going to work out perfectly anyway, right? That's just life. You can wake up and, anything can change for the better or worse, frankly, in my mind. Like, things are just kind of gonna go. We only can, like you said, control so much, but you have so many options at your disposal of how to still win. And that's partly why I love real estate, because you can win a whole bunch of different ways, right? And, if you've got your pulse on the market, you've had history, you guys been in this game for so long, you've seen it go in different directions, right? And back from 2008 GFC, like, that feels like a distant memory, but it wasn't that long ago when interest rates were like this. And, being able to understand that there's cycles that we go through. And there's going to be opportunities even when it feels like crap out in the market, right? Yeah. There's always going to be it if you understand what options you have. So that's
and
wonderful.
The beauty of it is that you can't really handle controlling things like that as strongly in the stock market as you can in the real estate world. But you have way more control, especially if you're, like Stacy mentioned earlier, if you're doing 5+ units and you're in the apartment world, you have more control over the net operating income, which then drives what the value of the property is versus being in residential. You can't really drive the value in your stock market unless you're calling the shots and you're the big bank. So Just kidding. We're going to buy them all now. Thank you. Like, that's the cycle that happens, right? But that you don't see, you can't manipulate it that way, but you can in real estate. You can figure out, well, what can I do to increase my net operating income, which is going to drive that value up? And what do I have control over? So that's, foundationally, I think that's the biggest one that you could do for yourself, is understand that, and understand you have more control than you perceive in real estate.
Yeah. And that's the type of thing. I think it's feels risky until kind of, I think Stacy, you kind of mentioned, once you start learning and get more confidence, you're going to realize kind of the realities of it, as opposed to some perceived sort of fear or risks associated with it. I think once you get into it, listen, I think you said, people need somewhere to live, and there's economics around these things. You just got to learn it and get around the right types of people. So that's awesome. So, while we have a little bit more time here, the one thing I want to get your thoughts on too, which is always, I think people find this also risky too. You mentioned earlier in the conversation is, okay, so most people want to invest in where they can touch it. Maybe it's near their homes, but it may not make a lot of sense economically, just, price points and such, or tax regimes or whatever. Remote investing versus sort of kind of local. So talk more about that and how you've been able to be successful with remote investing, because that, I think, adds some fear to people when I've spoken to them. Like, what are you guys doing to help sort of mitigate some of the risks associated with remote investing?
Well, so when I first learned about it, which again, I'm glad I learned early, the person who I would learn from, he was Canadian and he was investing in the United States, and he wasn't flying to the US to invest. And I was like, well, well, hold on a second. How do you do that? Because I live in a place where I'm having a hard time like getting started. And so I think the best way I've been able to explain with people where they start to, because it just requires a shift of your mindset, because it is not difficult. It is actually easier to invest remotely than it is locally. And I know that sounds like an absurd statement, and I promise you it's the absolute truth. So let me explain it this way. Let's say, Tom, you're sitting there and all of a sudden you start getting a drip on your forehead. You look up and you're like, oh no, my roof is leaking, right? So like, what are you going to do at that point? You're going to go to your front door. You're going to open it up, step out on your porch and start yelling up and down the street. I need a roofer. I need a roofer. You're not going to do that, right? Of course not. What are you really going to do? You're going to open up your laptop. You're going to search roofers in wherever you are, wherever your property is. That is the exact same thing we do with remote. So for many years, Jen and I lived in San Diego. And in San Diego, there is no cash flow. Well, there is cash flow. It's called negative cash flow. So anytime we had any kind of issue on a property, well, frankly, we have property managers to handle it. But if we had to, we would do the exact same thing. We open up our laptop, and if we're in St. Louis, properties in St. Louis, and we're looking for a contractor, we search contractors in St. Louis. And just like we would if we were fixing our own roof in San Diego, we call a bunch of different ones and we interview them and we find the one that we're like, that's the best fit. So it's really a mindset shift when you realize what we're dealing with when we do remote investing is we're not like just calling random people on the street who happen to be there. We are dealing with business professionals, professional property management, professional realtors and brokers, professional home inspectors, professional licensed, experienced general contractors. So when you start to realize that really what you are is a highly paid project manager, you have to have the knowledge. They all know how to do what they do really well.
Better than you.
Way better than you. But they know how to do that one thing really well. I don't have to know how to do any of their jobs really well. What I have to understand is what is the whole picture and how do I bring it all together? And once you make that shift and realization, it's like, oh, that's how you kind of already operate at home. But it's just the stigma because we grow up driving around looking at properties with our parents who are buying their first house. Or maybe that's how you bought your first house, is getting in a car and driving and looking at it. But that's your home that you're going to live in. There's an emotional component. But with real estate investing, emotion is not part of it. It should not be part of it. It is about like the market, how stable the market is, and what are the numbers, and how much cash flow, and how much return on investment. So when you that's why it's easier, in my opinion, to invest remotely, because you can't get very emotionally attached because you're not there. But it's not, people say, well, how can you do it sight unseen? It's not sight unseen. I'm not seeing it, but way more qualified eyes are seeing it.
And we do see them, though.
Oh, yeah, and we do. Exactly. Technology these days.
Technology is out of control.
Absolutely see it.
So beneficial.
Yeah. But even before that existed, because I was investing before we had FaceTime and things like that, I have professionals on the ground looking at the properties and communicating, okay, hey, this neighborhood looks solid, or you got some neighbors on either side that's going to make it a little bit hard to rent. That's the whole idea with remote investing, is really just leveraging a team, interviewing them, finding the best people, and then having bench strength, 2 or 3 deep in every different area, so that if somebody doesn't work out, no big deal. You go to your second one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's to your point of familiarity, and I always ask people, like the companies they invest in the stock market, how do you even know the people who work at these companies? Right. Have you actually been to their headquarters? Do you know anything about them? But you've got your life savings, your retirement funds in these things. So, here you can directly work with and hire the team that's managing your asset and your business, right? Helping you be successful. Most of my properties out of state, I have one in the state. I live in Connecticut. It's my biggest headache, right?
Exactly.
I don't find anybody to property manage it. And I'm just like, it just drives me insane. And to your point, like I'm stuck there kind of emotionally connected. Now, the other ones, you said it spot on. Like I could be so objective about everything about it. I don't know anything. I let the people who know what the hell they're doing do the jobs. And I can kind of just be the business owner. Right. And,
exactly.
It's just fascinating to see the difference when, you're kind of glued to it and very close. And it sometimes can be a challenge for sure.
And it can be a lot more time consuming too. Like no matter what people do, whether they're working full time or everybody's busy. And when you have a property that is close, you can't help yourself. You're going to go do the things. We're naturally wired that way. And when the property is, many states over, you can't, which forces you exactly to get creative and resourceful and not use your time. So in 15 minutes time, through making some research, making some phone calls, we can accomplish the same thing it would have taken us 4 to 6 hours in our home market to go drive there, then drive to Home Depot and do that. And then that wasn't the right thing and drive back to Home Depot. And then there's traffic. And so it's so much more time consuming when you're there, because you're going to want to do it yourself. And when you can't, you become more of a business owner and you will leverage your time and use people who are there.
Absolutely. No, I think it's just like you built your teams around you for your business and the communities you've created. This is all very a team oriented sport. I think finances in general, and your model itself puts it on a pedestal, because that's the only way you're going to win this game. You can't do these things yourself. Yeah. And so as individuals who are thinking about this is why you kind of try out some resources like Jen and Stacy and her organization, because they can give you that sort of guidance and support and team atmosphere to be able to help you win and succeed. You don't have to do it yourself. So Jen, this has been a fascinating conversation, really helpful information for those who are thinking about getting into real estate and maybe thinking about an academy. Like how is it best for anyone who's maybe interested to kind of step forward and kind of connect with you guys?
The best place to go is on our YouTube channel. It's called Apartment Investing with Jen and Stacy. If you just search for that in YouTube, it's there. There is a special playlist that we made for anybody who's new and interested. It's just from A to Z. It's called Apartment Acquisition Accelerator playlist within our YouTube channel. So Apartment Investing with Jen and Stacy, then go find the playlist that says Apartment Acquisitions Accelerator, and then watch those videos. And anywhere along the way, after you've watched a few, there's opportunities on there to book a call and explore the academy, or book a call and explore options where you might want to just put your money to work with us. But that's the best place to find us.
That's great. That's awesome. So I highly encourage that. Listen, there's no scary tactics here. This is giving you great information for free so you can explore it yourself. And I highly encourage you to do so. So Jen, Stacy, I really appreciate your time. And any last parting shots for our audience here before we close this podcast?
I would just say, whatever you're thinking about doing, like, time is going to pass whether you do anything or not. And time moves very quickly, as probably everybody has come to realize. So make a decision about where you want to start and start taking that one step at a time. Don't keep pushing it off, because before you know it, it's 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years later. And the amount of wealth that you could build in that 3, 5, and 10 years is huge. Like, don't wait. Even if you're afraid, it's okay. Be afraid. Everybody's afraid when they get started. Be afraid and do it anyway. Like, you are worth it. Your family is worth it. Your generational wealth that you can build is worth it. So just make a decision, take one step, then the next and the next. Don't let any more time pass, because it goes like that.
And I want to add that we are coming up onto a very, very awesome moment in history, where there is opportunity everywhere. And the time to lean in and be ready is not the time to get ready. So get over there and watch those videos on our YouTube channel so that you're ready, because I'm telling you what, 2024 is going to be, woo! It's going to be awesome. Yeah, lots of opportunity.
So much.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. So everyone take the next step, and the next step will be easier, right? It's just like being courageous and knowing that you're going into this with an open mind and around good people, and you can't lose, frankly, in my mind. So thanks again. Thanks for joining, Jen and Stacy, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Perennial Pride Podcast.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride Podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it, and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.